You're listening to the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Christine, certified life coach, pain to power mentor, and creator of Embody You Mindset Mastery School. I'm here today to discuss living life after disease, disaster, or adversity, to discuss living life fully once again, a life of hope, peace, and resiliency, a life fully embodied. I utilize the lessons that I learned going through not one, but two primary cancers. I'm here today to guide you to the life of your dreams, turn your pain into power, and lead you back to yourself. Welcome. Okay, so today I want to talk about happiness, the elusive happiness, the thing we all want, the thing we all quest for. Spoiler alert, happiness is a choice. And what do I mean by that? What I mean to say is that a huge portion of us, myself included, especially prior to all this, we are victims of our circumstance. So what I mean by that is, if your family is happy, you are happy. If your family is struggling, you are struggling. If your boss is good, your job is good. If your boss is bad, your job is bad. And examples like that. And those things seem logical. You know, if I've got a bad boss, how am I going to have a good job? It makes sense. But what I'm here to tell you is to be a little bit in your face and tell you that truly happiness is a choice. That you can choose to be happy with that job, or at least be neutral with that job, as opposed to angry, unhappy, unsettled every day. And this really became applicable for me when, of course, as we all know, if you've been listening along, that became really applicable for me when I got cancer. You know, it was a choice. And I started out very much the victim of my circumstance, which is appropriate. It's appropriate to feel sad and hurt and emotional when we need to be sad, hurt, and emotional. And if you've been listening along with me for a while, then you know that that it is important to feel into those emotions of discomfort. However, once I sat in it for, I think, a month, to be honest, you know, just so upset and hurt. And, you know, I remember it. I remember it was something like the 17th needle that week, and a woman called me back and she said, "We didn't get your blood test, you need to come back." And I have never screamed at a steering wheel so loud in my life. I wailed. I fell apart. And it was at that moment that I realized, once I started to feel some of that extreme pain pass, that I realized, sitting there in my car, that I had a choice. Two choices. I could continue to be here for the next year because it's going to happen anyway. Or I can choose happiness. And metaphorically speaking, I recall kicking off of what felt like the bottom of a pool and rising to the surface. And after that, people started telling me, oh, you're so strong, you're so powerful, and those sorts of things. And I love the compliments, and I appreciated them so deeply. But truly, I did it because sitting in discomfort for an entire year is A, completely unnecessary, and B, painful. So how does this translate to you? Think about your everyday. You think about a typical day at work, or a typical day with your family, or a typical day with friends. And think about how many times you are sitting in discomfort, how many times you are upset, how many days are just terrible days. And that is because of circumstance. But what would it look like to choose happiness? How could your experience of life be more enjoyable? And a good portion of us, we identify with our victimhood, and we identify with our circumstance. And it gives us this sense of power. I am strong because I've been through all this. I am strong because I don't care what the world thinks. Screw them. But I'm sorry to tell you, but if you are that person, you are sitting in your own shit every day, day in and day out, and you've made that choice to sit in your own shit day in and day out. And I know that's hard to hear, but man, what if you could make a different choice? What if you could choose happiness? What would that look like? No, you would no longer be the martyr, the battler, the fighter, and you would no longer have that identity. And yeah, that took a little bit for me to release, because I wanted the victim cuddles, I call them victim cuddles, like, oh, I'm so sad I have cancer, take care of me, and all of those sorts of things. I wanted that because, who doesn't? But because I just fought for normalcy, I fought for happiness, I chose it every day, I didn't get the casseroles. Well, the pandemic didn't help. But, for the most part, at the very beginning, I had tons, don't get me wrong, I was lots of love. But, I was so okay that everybody kind of stopped, And that was hard at first. It really was, because I had this option of these victim cuddles that I could have gotten over and over and over again, and all I had to do was tell people how terrible my life is. But where would that have gotten me? That's what I'm asking you. You identify with your victimhood, and you get all these great little warm fuzzy victim cuddles. But it means you have to continually sit in your own shit. So for 5 minutes of glory, you need to sit in 24 hours of shit. It doesn't make sense, does it? And yet our society is trained to sit and identify with circumstance. How does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense to me. And again, I asked you, what would it look like if you chose happiness? Imagine a day where, I'm going to go back to the boss thing, because I had a lot of really shitty bosses. But imagine a day where your boss was, really in your face, And instead of following him down that rabbit hole, oh, that he's such an asshole, and he's such a micromanager and all of these things, rather than thinking that way, if you thought to yourself, well, that's his experience of the world. Can you tell I'm talking about somebody I know? That's his experience of the world. That's his context. That's what he knows. And, you can choose whatever fits for you. It can be pity, it can be neutrality, it can be whatever. But you can just say to yourself, that's him. That's his experience. I'm choosing a different experience. And you just go on with your day. You go on with your day within your context box of your reality. Imagine how different that day could be if you came home from work, not a victim of your circumstance, but instead the superhero of your own day. How you could show up for your family, how you could show up for your friends with an open heart. I just think it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, this idea of choosing happiness. And it wasn't one that we were taught, was it? When we were kids, when we were really young kids, and we bumped our heads, our parents didn't make a big deal out of it. So we didn't make a big deal out of it. My little nephew now, he bumped his head on the coffee table the other day, and we were just like, "Oh, you okay? You good?" And he's just like, their voices are all high. Everything's good. And when we're older and, fall off our bikes, our parents make a huge deal out of it. So what do? We make a huge deal out of it. And then we get all these victim cuddles from our parents. All the, "Oh, I'll get you ice cream," and, "I'm sorry you fell off your bike," and all of those sorts of things. So we learn that the rougher we show up, the quicker we'll get the ice cream. I'm sure you can see that in your kids, nieces, nephews, sisters, brothers now. And I think it's a broken model. I really do. Because as we know in movies, if an actor plays the sad part long enough, that actor can become depressed. We've seen this. We've lost people because of this. Because they're playing a part. And then it becomes their reality. And I'm asking you, and I'm telling you, don't create that reality for yourself. Just so that you can play the part. Just so that you can get those victim cuddles. So how do we do this? That's a good question. There's multiple different ways. I myself really enjoy the context box way. So thinking to myself, that's that person's context box. This is my context box. And what do I mean by context box? I mean my understanding of the world. So I'm able to separate myself from somebody having a different day. And that fits for me. Another way that you might do it would be a pattern interrupt. And that would be just to simply say to yourself, stop it. Stop this. Stop falling down this emotion. This is unnecessary. And of course, ask yourself first, is this an emotion that needs to be felt into? And if you feel expansive at the idea of feeling into that emotion, then do. It's important that you find that balance between choosing happiness and spiritual bypassing. If you're consistently spiritual bypassing by choosing happiness, then you never feel, you'll never move.
you'll get stuck. So, ask yourself, what is this? Is this petty? Is this something small, like I'm upset with my micromanaging boss? Or, is this cancer? And do I need to feel into this for a month? And your context is going to be different, right? For me, petty boss, cancer, that's applicable for me. For you, it's going to be different, and do know that you don't have to compare everything to, the starving kids in Africa or cancer. You can compare it to something real in your own lives. It's viable and valuable also. However, okay, so I digress. So moving on to other ways that you can choose happiness throughout the day. So if there is something going on and you're just stuck in a funk, it is amazing what a beautiful piece of music will do. Or what listening to comedy will do. Or a movie. Or a bath. Or whatever. And that's what we call self-care. It's important, if you're in a funk, to find something that fits for you that's self-care. Now for me, that would be described as things like burning incense, chiming my sound bowls. It would be doing a little yoga, doing a meditation, which is easier said than done when you're in a funk, let me tell you. It might be a walk. That also really works well for me. Lately, that's been my go-to. For you, it could be completely different. But find something that helps you to come out of your funk. And know that when you're in that funk, you're not going to want to do it. But you're going to be happy that you did. Okay? So that's another way that you can choose happiness. And throughout all of my cancer, what really worked for me, this is the golden ticket, you guys, is finding gratitude. And gratitude is like a muscle. It takes a while to exercise it and to get good at it. But I would think to myself, oh, I feel terrible from this chemotherapy. This is so terrible. But you know what's worse than chemotherapy? Cancer. So I'm grateful to the chemotherapy. I have cancer and I'm able to see life differently now. What a blessing. Gratitude. I have seen more love and giving than I've ever understood in my entire life. Gratitude. Okay? So these are some examples. You can find gratitude in your day for everything. If I was able to find gratitude for cancer, trust me, there is ways to find gratitude in everything. I know that sounds, I can see your shoulders lifting already. Oh, but you can't find gratitude for this. Yes, you can. Everything. I know that sounds crazy, but there is something in everything that you can find a silver lining to. So challenge yourself today. Today, challenge yourself to choose gratitude, context box, to choose a pattern interrupt, to choose a self-care, whatever it is. There's probably 100 other ways. Because we're all living within our context boxes, right? So these are things that work for me. And things that work for you are going to be different. But choose something. Choose something that suits you. Okay? Don't sit in your own shit day in and day out just so that you can get 5 minutes of victim cuddles. I beg you. I know it sounds so nice. And it's warm and it's fuzzy, and I get it. I get it because I know it. But just think about, is the juice worth the squeeze? Because in my experience, it isn't. There's a lot more pain than it's worth. So I hope I have shook something in you today and helped you to reframe and see things a little bit differently. And I hope that you go out today and you choose happiness. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found expansion with this last episode, then that means that others will too. And the best way to get the word out about the podcast is by leaving a review. I would be so grateful if you could leave me a review and let me know how you felt about the podcast. Included in the show notes will be everything that we talked about today, including all of my transformative programs. Change is just on the horizon, my friend.